Good morning, Dr. Mimi. We are Navin Raja and Mimaraj, and today we will present about IH risk assessment, CHRA, and CEM.
A very good day, Dr. Mimi. So, I'm Navin Raja and we'll be presenting about chemical exposure monitoring, which is CEM. So, for the definition, chemical exposure monitoring is an assessment of chemicals hazardous to health, which the employee shall ensure that the exposure of employees are monitored in accordance to occupational safety and health, which is the use and standard of exposure of chemical hazardous to health regulations in 2000 with an approved method of monitoring and analysis. So the objective of MEC are, first of all, we have to analyze the concentration of pollutant on the factory area. Second, we need to identify exceeding the permitted exposure level. And finally, ensure the exposure of employees to chemical hazardous to health complying to the OSHA standard as stimulated in the safety data sheet CSDS of the chemical used. So we have discussed about the rules of monitoring for CEM. So as for the first step, we need to do a preliminary visit. For preliminary visit, we need to do a collection of information through interview the worker, site observation, and review documents. The second step is by identification of chemicals or contaminants. There are three categories which are by properties, physical characteristics, and usage. For chemical properties, there are two types which are organic and inorganic. Physical characteristics has three types: solid and liquid, gas and vapor, and particulate such as fume, mist, and dust. And by usage, they are solvent, metals, acid, bases, and also pesticides. So for step 3, we need to refer to NIOSH method. For NIOSH method, we need to select the correct sampling method considering availability of collection media, availability of analytical method, and finally method of transportation. So for step 4, we need to conduct monitoring. First, we need to pre-calibration of instrument and sampling media. In this category, we need to assemble of a collection media, selection of the correct calibrator, and correct setup to perform calibration. Second, by monitoring activity. In this category, we need to correct assembly of the equipment, measurement of the temperature, humidity, and air velocity, and labeling and sealing of the product. And finally, we need to post calibration as per pre-calibration setup and reject the samples if the error is more than 10%. And fifth step, we need to send the samples to the accredited laboratory. The common analytical methods used are gravimetric method, gas chromatography, ion chromatography, atomic absorption spectrophotometry, fiber counting using phase contrast microscopy, and X-ray diffraction, which is known as XRD. And the last step, we need to prepare a report. In this report, we need to do three types of categories, which are calculation, conclusion, and also submission.
Now let's move on to the chemical health risk assessment, CHRA. Health risk assessment is an assessment that has to be conducted by the employer arising from the use, handling, storage, or transportation of chemicals hazardous to health in their workplace as required by the Occupational Safety and Health Use and Standard of Exposure of Chemicals Hazardous to Health Regulation 2000. And the employer is allowed to appoint an assessor registered with this department to conduct the chemical health risk assessment in their workplace. All the assessors should conduct the CHRA manual that was published by this department. The objective of this assessment is to identify the hazards to health posed by each chemical substance used, stored, handled, or transported within the place of work, to evaluate the degree of exposure of employees to the chemical hazardous to health, either through inhalation, skin absorption, or ingestion, to evaluate the adequacy of existing control measures, to conclude on the significance of the health risks posed by the chemicals hazardous to health, and last is to recommend further appropriate control measures to prevent or reduce risk. There are 10 steps in assessment. The first one is deciding the assessor. Next, gather the information about chemicals, the work and work practice, then divide into work units, determine degree of hazard, evaluate exposure, assess adequacy of control measures, concluding the assessment, identify actions to be taken, reporting the assessment, and the last one is to review the assessment. And that's all from us. Thank you.